Hello and welcome to Tandy of BEING Podcast. I'm Oscar Bromo, and today my guest is Tandy of BEING. He also runs Skeleton Dust Records, which started out as a noise label and is now a full retail shop in Dayton, Ohio. Luke is also a member of Heat Signature with Brad Griggs and Harness with Shane Church. If you're a fan of Tandy of BEING Podcast, please support it at patreon.com/WhiteCentipedeNoise. All right, so Luke, welcome to Tandy of BEING Podcast.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. We had you here with Stefan and Brad on one of my first episodes together, talking about your kind of trifecta harsh noise groups, Heat Signature, Action Discipline. And so we were able to kind of talk one-on-one a bit about, being in your activities, but not as in-depth as I would have liked. So glad you're back, and we can go into all that much more.
Thanks for indulging my ego.
You're a very humble guy. And you did mention, I think on that podcast or in private, I can't really remember, but it's something we've kind of talked about on and off, over the years, is that you kind of mentioned at some point being less enthusiastic about noise than you had in the past. And you've always been a really kind of you're a noise lifer. That's clear that you're really into it and love it from your, deepest core. But that for some time you kind of just weren't as excited about it. And, it probably had something to do with your, opening the record shop, Skeleton Dust, which deals in all sorts of types of music. But, can you talk a little bit more about that feeling and why that was, and then if that's changed at all since you last kind of brought that up or talked to me about that?
Yeah, I think just in general, it's just sort of changed. Maybe not. It hasn't lessened over the years, like my interest in noise or fanaticism with noise, but it's just changed, I think. And yeah, certainly the record store was a big part of that. And for many different reasons. I think being surrounded by other types of non-noise music more consistently, like just has influenced what I'm interested in listening to on a daily basis, and just what I appreciate in general. Having the store is like really, really opened my mind to a lot of different types of music that I didn't think I would enjoy before. So I think there was just a long period of time where I certainly enjoyed things outside of noise, but that was kind of the main interest I had, I guess. So I was just really focusing hard on that. And yeah, being sort of surrounded by noise still with the store maybe made me jaded or something about it in a way. I guess just like when you're surrounded by something, or it just gives you a different perspective on things.
Maybe also when you're like kind of reliant on selling it for your living.
Yeah. It's like a commodity, and
Yeah.
becomes more of a commodity than like a creative outlet. And so I think in some ways, like, I'm really, really happy I have the store, and it's probably the best decision I've ever made career-wise in my life. But yeah, it certainly killed it for me in a way, like just adding all the business and having to like pay my bills with selling noise and other types of music. Yeah, it's taken away some of the magical feeling of it I would get, which I still get in different ways, like, listening to noise that I really enjoy, like by myself, like in my car when I'm driving, or going to shows, having shows at the store, or playing live sets. I still get the feeling that we all know, that kind of like unspeakable feeling of why we love noise so much. But it's
Yeah.
certainly the day to day of buying and selling noise and just the capitalism of that, just sort of,
Like the scene stuff probably as well, like the
yeah. And it's just changed so much even in the last 10 years. Like social media really changed things around a lot in a lot of ways. Like, um, kind of miss the old forum days, like, when it was just a forum.
yeah.
It's really nice having like the internet to connect people in the noise world. I'm really grateful for that, and just can't even imagine what it was like pre-internet days, when that was so much harder to network with people and connect. And but I think that just social media has, obviously it's good in some ways. You share information and you can sell stuff, but I don't know. It's just kind of like overwhelming, I guess, compared to
Yeah.
just going on a forum and doing it that way.
I was talking about this and thinking about this a lot recently. I was writing with someone about, and I think it was after the interview with Saudi, and I don't right, but I was writing with someone who we were talking about that issue of kind of the lack of talking about noise and lack of reflection on noise, even though we're on, social media has become like the dominant form. And one thing that kind of dawned upon me, and I wrote this to him, and I, I think a big factor of it. Well, I love forums. I still think forums are so important, and they're still around. And one of the reasons I really think they're so valuable and noble is that there's no images on there, and you can't really present yourself or your ego. I mean, you can, and it's not like there aren't people who get kind of egotistical and act like dicks on forums, but I think really what social media unfortunately boils down for a lot of people is like it still has some element like they're trying to be sexy.
Hmm.
Like they're
Yeah.
trying to be present like I really think like that is behind the psychology of a lot of it. Like just to be seen by other people and be attractive or interesting to other people. And
Yeah.
that's why a lot of people really gravitate towards it, even if they're not actively doing that. Whereas on
Hmm.
a forum, you really don't have any of that. You don't have any of that cool. You don't have the ability to make yourself look cool or seem cool
Hmm.
or kind of cultivate an image at all. I mean, very minimally maybe with what you write and things like that, but that's you really have people on forums writing text about something they're obsessed with.
Yeah. Hmm.
And there you just get so much more
Hmm.
serious thought and dedicated minds and active. And you get a lot of people that shit on forums that are like, "Oh god, fucking forums, it's so nerdy or it's so lame or toxic or whatever." I mean, I don't know, but there's a certain amount of people that really like think that's like really low, and
I
for
didn't
some
know
reason
that.
think Instagram is really like the way to go because you can be kind of like detached or just post a picture of yourself doing something with no comment and just like kind of let people figure it out. I mean, I don't know, but it's the uncoolness I think of forums are really it's quality.
Hmm. Hmm. I had
You know
no
what I
idea
mean?
there was a contingent of people that make fun of forums, like online forums, and put like social media as like a better option.
I don't know if they how actively they do it, but I mean, I notice a lot of the people that are very active on social media with
Hmm.
their, noise projects or activities are not present on forums. And I have seen kind of just, I have seen noise forums, just that kind of term used in kind of like a derogatory manner. Like, I'm not on the noise forums or whatever. Like, I'm not all out here talking on the noise forums all the time. Like,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
you're out here on Instagram posting stories all the time about, your little collection or activities or what you're working on. So
Yeah.
there's a certain dichotomy there. And I think it's a younger crowd on Instagram and an older crowd on forums,
Certainly. Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know?
I think like just it boils down to the ease of using each of those platforms. It takes a little bit more work to go onto a forum, and especially to post something. But even
Yeah,
it takes more work just to read a forum, because you have to select,
right.
what room you want to go into or the category you want to read. And we get our phones out. It's just like the endless, just using one
Yeah,
thumb, like absorb as much
yeah,
content as you can, without even really thinking about it. But like on a forum, it's like more of a conscious thing where you're going on there to seek information that's broke down into groups. So it just takes more work, and I
it's
kind of
true.
I had go
Sorry to
ahead.
interrupt you, but another one big difference though is that on forums you don't have the ability to receive much confirmation or affirmation of what
Yeah.
you do or say or give that. Like they, at least the ones that I'm on or familiar with, I mean, maybe they're, some maybe have some sort of like button to post it, but for the most part, no, you just write something and
Mm-hmm.
then maybe someone responds or most of the time not. I mean, and then people read it. You don't know how many people have read it, what they think about it, unless they also get engaged. Whereas that dopamine hit of the you post something effective and then how much likes do you get, um, I think is also very attractive to people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a big difference, is the lack of a dopamine, as big of a dopamine fix with using like a forum
Yeah,
than social media, which is purely based around affirmations. And I mean, I know like it's there to share information, but also, yeah, the reactionary part, like you mentioned.
yeah. But I will say that I think that if everyone likes dopamine and everyone likes affirmation and needs it, I mean, it's not like being. I will say the amount of satisfaction that you can get, I think, from someone, even just one or two people, for say like writing a little review of your release on a forum or something you've done on a forum, I think massively outweighs the satisfaction of posting it on Instagram and getting a bunch of likes. Like when I mean, I'm very fortunate. I mean, I don't know if I'm fortunate, but I really, really enjoy the fact that, you know, Tuesday after I air the podcast, without fail, on, you know, a couple message boards, I'll go on there and see people talking about the podcast from the day before and like the topics we talked about or, whatever. And for me, that even if it's not a ton of people, it's just a few people,
Hmm.
that's like that is a huge
Yeah.
dopamine hit for me. I mean, and like even like I remember doing, when I release something, when I see one person that writes a review
Hmm.
about either a release that I've made as Wince or release on White Savvy Noise, like having seen a couple people just take the time to write something out, their thoughts on it,
Hmm.
that's really really valuable and
Yeah.
lasting. I feel like that gives me something actually to hold on to. I think there's also kind of people have kind of expressed to me that they feel frustrated that they'll release something that they've worked really hard on and it'll go out there and maybe it'll sell well, maybe it'll sell out, maybe it'll get kind of a lot of people posting pictures about it
Hmm.
for a couple weeks on Instagram, but I think there's also like a lack of feeling like, oh, well, but what do people think? And maybe that's selfish to think that you're entitled to a lot of feedback or or praise or critique or whatever. But I mean, that is something I think every artist or person who does anything creative wants to. I mean, you want to get that,
Yeah.
and the forums you get that in smaller doses. But when you get it, I think it's so much more rich and meaningful.
Hmm. Yeah. The written word is very powerful. I mean,
It still is.
arguably more powerful than images, you know, because it is
Yeah.
more meaningful if you go on to like a forum and you see that somebody has posted an unsolicited review of a release you put out or you put out on your label versus somebody on Instagram, you know, posting a story of the picture of whatever it is and then saying like this shit slaps or whatever, you know, like
Yeah.
the effort that somebody put
Yeah.
into going to the forum and actually writing about it, like, yeah, I mean, it's just, it's noticeable and more meaningful. So everybody out there use
Yeah.
forums. They're like super, super important, I think. And yeah, we're lucky that we
Absolutely.
still have a few places that we're still really active with noise, even though we've over the years have watched forums come and go. But I feel like it's at a good spot right now,
Yeah.
surprisingly for 2023. Who would have known?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I do agree. This episode of White Snippy Noise Podcast is brought to you by Absurd Exposition Label and Screamin' Writhe Distro. There are 4 new CDs now available on Absurd Exposition: Dodge Jones Rage, West Coast Power Outage 5. The power trio of Chris Dodge, Mason Jones, and William Rage return to AE with another dose of psychedelic circuit overload. Neural H2T, an unreleased session from 2001, recorded by Howard Bylerman at the infamous Hotel to Tango Studios in Montreal. Fold, to favor the occurrence. Neural's harsh noise is formulated by the give and take of restraint and control. With his alter ego as Fold, Alan Bloor uses the same techniques to create ambient soundscapes rich with the tactility of their found metal sources. Rusalka, Base Waters, reissue of the 2019 LP. Using a theremin as a centerpiece, Kate Rissek leads us into a harsh noise odyssey of oceanic depths. Visit screamandwrithe.com for all 4 CDs and a distro of over 2,200 items, servicing the international noise community at large. In your observation of noise as a record store owner, but also as a noise fan, how do you feel about what's happened in the past few years? Let's use COVID as kind of a marker. I mean, that's
Mhm.
cliche, but it's very, very still relevant. And we've talked about this also kind of in private, is that how, you know, what did you experience as a record store owner, first of all, over that period until now? And what did you kind of witness also in terms of noise, like both artistically and not just in terms of sales, but also kind of in terms of creativity? What have you seen happen in the past few years? What's your take on it?
I mean, you know, certainly there was like a noise boom that coincided with the pandemic, and I mean, was selling stuff like crazy around that time. You know,
Yeah.
right when the pandemic hit through, I don't know, maybe a year and a half so after that. Yeah, so like just from a commerce standpoint, it was selling a lot of stuff, and people were feverish with wanting to buy new noise releases, and there was tons of stuff coming out, like high quality releases coming out. I mean, I feel like that's like the resurgence of Tronics kind of coincided with the pandemic too, when
Mhm.
they really just started cranking out tons of good stuff. Um, which has since, you know, the whole commerce aspect has definitely died down, and I think that just goes with the typical wave fashion of the noise scene. You know, the ups and downs. So this we've talked about that many times before. How there's high
Yeah.
levels of popularity, and then it just kind of goes away, and it's always like cyclical. It seems like. Um, so, but create like the artistic aspect. I'm not sure if I have any strong like thoughts about that. There's certainly a lot of good noise that was coming out and still coming out, but I don't see like a big change in how things were happening artistically. I guess
Yeah. I know
nothing
you
that I can.
mentioned, I talked about it on the last episode with Jim from Slacking, but I mean, I remember talking to you maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and before Slacking had released anything really publicly, or at least that I noticed, and you were like, "Oh, this guy's Slacking. He's sending me some stuff. It's really fucking good. It's really kind of bizarre and different."
Hmm.
And now he's quite active and quite public. But have you seen kind of any sort of new flavors or approaches or styles to noise that you think are kind of unified or have some legs or lasting?
Hmm. Yeah, I think like what Jim is doing, that sort of like strange sound, as people describe it as, like the strange, bizarre noise kind of stuff that harkens back to the days where of early noise, where the foundations weren't really laid down yet, and things were a lot more free and open as far as like people weren't as pigeonholed into subgenres like they are a lot these days. And so I do that is actually one thing that the weird side of noise being embraced more by people, and people taking more chances with what they're doing. And like Worth is like an obvious example, even though he's been active for many, many years. But I think
Yeah,
people see him as sort of like a beacon of that way of thinking about sound. And um, yeah.
I think Worth was the I don't know, not the Godfather, but I mean, when he came out the Blinder LP, that was kind of at a time when harsh noise generally was at a lull, and particularly
Hmm.
kind of wild, unusual. I mean, when that came out, and just the fact that he put his money into an LP, which also at the time was kind of rare, because it was like, well, who's gonna buy? There's not really who's gonna buy a harsh noise LP right now. And he put
Hmm.
out that crazy purple LP with like and it's such a violent, fucked up, crazy record. I think at that time that for me was like kind of like that kind of broke open the floodgates. I feel for a lot in terms of just listening, but also a lot of creativity.
Hmm.
Not that anyone has copied Worth, but a lot of just creatively free and yeah, like you said, I think risks being taken by
Hmm.
noise artists and no, I mean, and harsh noise artists. I think that's to to make that differentiation. I think when we talk about noise, I mean, sometimes I talk very specifically about, oh, this isn't happening in noise, this isn't happening in noise, and I guess I'm talking about like harsh noise. Like if we want to really kind of talk about everything that might be considered noise, there's probably a lot that I don't know about or follow as much. So, but I'm talking about like the violent, loud, harsh stuff having a
Hmm.
different characteristic. I think that Blinder LP was like a big, I don't know, milestone in
Hmm.
things how they've developed. I don't know.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. There's still all the, subgenres, I guess, and within harsh noise that people are still doing. But yeah, it seems like maybe a little bit more open-ended now as far as like what people are doing, and maybe less focus on styles. Like maybe that's what's happening. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's still noise.
So this will probably air a couple days after you've done it, but you have been quite inactive with Being your solo project for the past several years. I don't know about playing live, but in terms of recording, for sure. I mean, I don't think there's been a new Being recording in a while, and I don't know. I feel like there hasn't been a new a Being set in quite a while. But you're going to be
Mhm.
playing live this coming weekend. You're playing with Slacking, Pain Appendix.
And no copula.
What's going on with Being right now? What's the current status of Being, and how are you preparing for this show?
I just decided to do that on a whim because Hollow Serpent Tooth from Nashville was supposed to play that show, and they had to drop. And normally I would just find somebody else to play in my place, and but I couldn't. I don't know why. I just didn't even think about it, and I was like, I'll just do a beating set, and so that's that. And I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'll probably. I have my gear set up downstairs, but I'll probably, rehearse a little bit before the set and everything. But yeah, I don't know. I just decided to do it. I guess that's where I'm at with the project right now. I don't really feel like a strong urge to keep up with a regular release schedule or like consciously trying to like keep it active, because I think I felt that way for a long time.
Yeah.
Wanting to like stay relevant and be active with the project, and make sure I put out releases every so often so people don't think that like I'm done with it or whatever. And I've had like a lot of very nice offers from people to release Bean stuff over the years, and a lot of people I said yes to,
Yeah.
and I've never fulfilled that promise of submitting material for releases. And so I think I just got to a point where I was like, I'm just gonna like just put this on pause right now, because obviously I'm not really doing anything with it, and I'll just kind of return to it whenever I want to return to it. And I think that's just how I'm gonna treat it now. Like, I still like doing it and it's fun, but I don't really feel like a desire to like try to stay relevant, or I don't know. I feel like it's more pure if I just do it when I want to do it, and not really care about anything else that much. Yeah.
Have you ever felt? I mean, I feel like a lot of your releases, it seemed it's a very focused project, but also seemed like you made conscious efforts across releases to kind of do different things or different styles, or
Hmm.
kind of like almost like there was a goal of something, like you, I don't know how to describe it, but you kind of adopted a certain style or a certain goal for a release, and they're quite very varied between, it wasn't like you were just turning out the same thing over and over.
Hmm.
Did that kind of did you feel like you were maybe not sure what you wanted to do or say with it anymore, or do you feel like there's something you still want to do new with it at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was definitely a reason why I kind of slowed down, because I felt like I ran out of ideas basically. And I did like I've always seen the project, even though it's always been like a harsh noise thing mostly. I've seen it as an experimental project, in the sense that just like when I first started getting into noise, and like a similar experience that many of us have had is the experimentation with sound. And so I tried to continue doing that, even though I got my footing with understanding equipment and techniques better. I still wanted to keep things fresh when I was doing the project. And yeah, I guess there's sort of phases of the project where I try different methods of creating the sound, and that was always really important to me, just to keep things fresh. And I've always made an effort to change my gear setups around a lot, like the pedal chains, and just to
Yeah.
try different things and keep it fresh all the time, because I don't want to get stuck in doing the same thing every time. It's good to like explore something for a little bit and sort of perfect it, or fine tune it a little bit, but then after a while, it's like I don't want to be doing the same thing, playing the same set, putting out the same recordings over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But I also feel like if it ain't broke, don't fix it either attitude as well with noise. Like, I don't think people need to reinvent the wheel with what they're doing. Definitely believe in, if you do it well, and if it's not an original idea, that's totally cool with me. I I
Yeah.
appreciate and enjoy noise like that a lot too.
Are there things you want to do with it, or do you see yourself trying to push it in a new direction for you personally?
I don't know. I don't really have any ideas how to
Okay.
do that really. I don't know. No, I don't have anything yet, really. I'm not sure what
Yeah.
I'm going to do for the show. I think I'm just going to more or less play what I use in Heat Signature, but just do it in a solo capacity.
Yeah, I want to talk to you afterwards to see how it felt and you know
Hmm.
what you think after doing it. If the beast has been awakened, or if it's kind of like, all right, that was cool,
Hmm.
do it again, it's down the road or whatever. But
Hmm.
happy to see that you're playing again for sure.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I really love doing Heat Signature a lot, and so I think that's kind of been a part of why I don't feel I need to do Bean as much anymore, because Heat Signature giving has given my interest in noise a lot more like purpose and meaning. I think like it's the first time I feel like I've been in a band. I guess I feel like I consider Heat
Yeah.
Signature a band, and just all the elements of it, the visual aspect and the themes, and it just became a lot more meaningful to me than Being, which is honestly kind of an anonymous thing. I don't really. There's not like many themes behind it. They're pretty loose and abstract, and visually
Hmm.
speaking, I mean, there's not much of one really. But Heat Signature just became just a lot more important to me, I guess, and
Yeah,
feels
it's
good to
very focused too.
yeah. And Brad's like really good at noise, so I don't have
Yeah.
to worry as much about being like an amazing solo artist when you have somebody incredible to to fall back on doing good
Yeah.
noise aside you. So yeah.
With being, what are some of your most important recordings or recordings that you're most proud of? And what can you tell me about Battery Cages, that series of recordings?
Battery Cages, yeah, I guess that was the first tape I ever put out with a project. And I mean, there was not much meaning behind it, I guess. I think I was just like reading through like a book one day, or reading something maybe online, and it was talking about like factory farms, and battery cages was like the first. It was the first time I ever heard of that term, like a series of cages connected together that are often electrified too, which is pretty horrifying to think about.
Yeah.
Um, but I think at the time when I was younger, I thought it was kind of an edgy sort of idea and thing. It didn't. I don't know. It doesn't really mean much of anything. I just decided to continue it as like a series of tapes that I put out. And I guess it was just like a thing where it was all stuff that was going to be on Skeleton Dust and not on another label. So it became sort of a series. I
Was
thought
there any
about
sonic, like, or process wise consistency or theme carrying on
no,
there?
no. I don't really think about that stuff much.
Sure.
With Being, I guess it's just make noise I think sounds good, and that I haven't always enjoyed myself, but sometimes I enjoy. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just like I think that's why I call the project Being too. Is it's very nobody knows what that means. It could mean a million different things, and I kind of like the idea of just sort of stripping away all the focus of themes and imagery, and just this is Being, and
Yeah.
it's just the noise. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like any kind of like titles I've come up with for releases have been just silly like personal things I've thought about to myself, like nothing really that important or um
Sure.
yeah.
But what about a recording you're particularly like proud of, or you think is like super strong in your catalog?
I like To Fall in Love with Your Own Reflection, the double tape that came out, Dear Girl, called Wendy.
Yeah. Yep.
That's like one of my favorite ones. It was just, I like sonically how it ended up. That was completely edited on a tape deck, and that was really the only time I ever edited a release like that.
Yeah.
And so I think because it was edited that way, it became a lot more of a collagey, cut up sort of recording. And I was just really proud of how it turned out and just the amount of work that went into it. And I think the end result was more meaningful to me than just a release I edit on a computer. So that's one of my favorite ones, I think. Um, Definitely like the later stuff I did, like the split with Kakerlak, I think is pretty good
Yeah.
material. And the Hydrocracker tape on Oxen is like another highlight, I think. I think this took me years and years to find my stride and like actually make stuff that I actually enjoyed listening to when I heard it.
Mhm.
It takes a long time to feel good about your
Any
work,
any
I think.
any plans to reissue any of those? Because those are I don't have those. And those are hard to come by, and there are people out there that really want those.
Yeah, there was I think there's going to be a Oxen at some point whenever I get them the material is putting out like a Being collection
Oh,
of
cool.
out of print and hard to find stuff, and so um, yeah, sort of like it's going to be Hydrocracker is going to be on there as part of it. I think it's going
Cool.
to be a double CD, but then he asked me
Nice.
to submit other works that I thought needed to be reissued. So it's going to be a lot of like the tour, maybe some tour releases or limited stuff that didn't really make it out that much that I think is still good enough to be on a reissue.
Cool.
Yeah.
What about Tephra?
Oh yeah. I don't know. I would do that again
What's Tephra?
someday.
What? How does that differ from Being?
Uh, it was always 100% tape based. Um, like all I would use effects and stuff like that, but like the sound source was always a cassette. Um, so I guess I thought of it as like my tape noise project or something, um, and it allowed me to like explore non-harsh textures a little bit more, I think. And I mean, I think I kind of started it because of like Chop Shop. Probably I was really
Huh?
still love Chop Shop, but in the early days of noise, getting into noise, that was like a very influential project for me, and it really made me appreciate sound uh, to like a really high level. I think because
Yeah.
that project is not really like trying to be anything. It just sort of exists, you know, like like that
Yeah.
sort of sound that Chop Shop goes for. It's just the sound of noise, but it's really enjoyable textures and the way it's made. And so I guess I was trying to do that with Tephra, where it was like not a harsh noise thing, but just like appreciating sound in a
Yeah.
different way.
What about the general like crossover from people, you know, at the record store checking out records, who don't know much about noise and kind of noticing this big presence of noise and experimental that you deal with? Do you get people that kind of are ever kind of drawn to it, or maybe converted or come to shows that maybe wouldn't otherwise, and kind of get hip to some of that stuff through knowing you and being around the record store?
Yeah, over the years, certainly people have gotten interested in it. I think just going in there and seeing it, and definitely, over time, there's been new people coming out to shows that I have never met before through the noise scene previously, anyway, which I think is really awesome. Um, oftentimes people come in and they just completely ignore the very abnormally large presence of cassette tapes and weirdly packaged things, and I just think they don't get it and they don't really ask questions about it, you know. Um,
Sure.
but sometimes people are just like, yeah, what is all this? What is this stuff? And or they'll like flip through records and like laugh at like the covers and the titles. Like there, there was a girl that came in a few weeks ago, and she was like showing her friend. She was like looking through the noise records and was showing her friend the Smell and Quim record that came out on Cheeses International, I think, the kind of more
Oh yeah.
recent one. Uh, I can't remember what it's called, but it's got the really funny cover.
Cunty bubbles.
Yeah, Tanty of BEING, yeah. And she went over her friend and was like, "Hey, come here, look at this." And it was funny because it was like something that she had seen in the store before, and she was seeking it out again just to show her friend this funny cover. And then so I like said
Funny.
something to her. She was checking out, and she didn't buy it or anything. But I was like, "Oh, I saw you checking out that Smell and Quim record," and she was like, "What?" Like I don't think she even knew what it was called, but she just thought saw a bunch of cocks all over the cover and thought it was funny. So people interact with it in ways like that too. But yeah, yeah,
And how do shows at the venue go? How's that been?
that's been really good. Yeah, people are always very attentive, and it's a very intentional audience that's there. I always like I'm really strict about charging a cover now. I used to be a little bit more loose about it back in the day, and would just kind of like be a donation thing, and people just could come in and check it out. But now I'm just way more strict about it, and I basically collect money at the door from people. So it kind of cuts back on the people just sort of stumbling in and checking stuff out. But they're great. They're always really well attended, I think, and just run a really tight ship now. There's a good sound system, and the shows go really fast. They usually only go from like 7 to 9 p.m., and we can easily fit in like 4 or 5 acts in that time span. Yeah, they're really good. Sometimes in a way, it feels like sterile compared to other like noise venues, like a basement or something like that, which I kind of like the casual feeling of having shows in places like that where it's a little more anything goes sort of vibe.
Yeah.
And it's pretty, I don't know, sterile is a harsh word, but I think it is a little sterile in the store because you're in a retail environment and, you know,
Do you ever feel like very protective, like, because yeah, I mean, sometimes people are often drinking,
yeah.
they get stupid, they have fun, they get loose, whatever. You ever feel like kind of like protective, like, oh fuck, people are gonna dump a beer on a, like, imagine a
Oh,
beer dumping into a open
yeah.
shelf of records would be pretty uh frustrating
Yeah.
and costly.
Yeah. I get anxious about that stuff, certainly. But
No
now that I think
moshing,
about what's that?
like a no moshing rule or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I know I do, thankfully that's not really an issue with shows at my store, but yeah, I get a little anxiety ridden at shows for sure, and just having a bunch of people in the store, more people than normal, and I think people are always really respectful of their surroundings when they're at shows there, and it's usually not a big deal. But yeah, it gives me some anxiety, and that's why I try to keep it really like keep it going fast and early. To starting the shows early is a
Yeah,
good thing. I think it like cuts down on any kind of like potentially bad things happening.
sure. You and I have toured before around the Midwest. I think we went out east, and you've done a number of other tours, kind of real, kind of get in the van and and slum it, sleeping on floors, playing harsh noise basements for, a week or two at a time. Obviously, that didn't happen for a couple years, but do you think that's back? Do you think people are doing that again? Like that kind of road dog kind of style touring?
It seems like it. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's just maybe, I don't know. I feel like that's the thing within maybe the past year or so. You're starting to see people comfortably planning tours more, and just with a lack of like a larger virus outbreak, there hasn't been one. So I think people are just, yeah, I think they're getting back into that for sure. I get
Would you see
asked about,
yourself doing it again?
um, yeah, I think so. I'm getting older though, so I'm a little bit more particular about the conditions of something like that. Um, but yeah, I would do it for sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm gonna do it soon in Europe with heat
Exactly.
signature, more or
Yeah.
less. Be road dogging it, as you say.
Yeah.
That's gonna be
What are
intense.
some of your what are some of your strongest memories of doing like being tours of satisfying elements and things that also maybe went horribly wrong that you really wish would have gone otherwise?
Hmm. Um. Hmm. Trying to think here. I mean, the tour that we went on, there was some good and not so good memories from that. There's a lot of ups and downs with that one, I feel like.
I think that was like a 50-50. I feel like every kind of little tour I've been on has been like one show's good, one show's shit. One show's good, it's like goes back and
Yeah.
forth like that.
Yeah, I mean that was fun because that was the first tour that I had ever been on, and I think that was your first tour as well, right?
I think so. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Mhm.
it was.
Um, and yeah, some not really just funny like thinking about that. All I can think about was that show in Baltimore where I think that girl like fell asleep on me or something, and you took a picture.
That was weird. That show in Baltimore
uh,
was crazy too because it was like Kakerlak played. I think
mhm,
he knew quite a few people and brought like a lot of people were there at the beginning, I think to see
mhm,
him, but they obviously
yeah,
weren't really there to see like him, like the noise side of him. They just kind of knew him, so they came. And then I think by the time he was done, like the room pretty much cleared out.
yeah. hmm I think
And then
Danny
the
did
rest of us
Legless.
played to like pretty much no one. Yeah, exactly. Danny
Yeah.
from Legless played and he played early. Yeah. We met him. I met him and that was cool because didn't know him before then. And we were then quite close after a while. We like talked a lot, like on the phone and stuff like after that for a while. And he played a
hmm
cool set, but then he had to bounce right away too. And it was like
Yeah.
I think that was probably one of those situations where the touring band sandwich, or maybe Cacklack played at the end, but the touring band sandwich would have been the right way to go because I feel like we were then like the last block, and it was like touring acts that no one in the city knew about, and it was like
hmm
we were playing to ourselves and a handful of people. Trash Ritual Chris was there, which was
That Chris Morrison. Yeah.
that was a rare sighting.
We had to do collaborations at that Pittsburgh show because it was something really weird with the booking where it was
Exactly.
unsure if it was going to happen. I think, and then it ended
Yeah.
up like something like another show got merged with ours maybe, and we ended up doing collaborations together. I remember freaking out that night and thinking like how much I just wanted to leave and go get a hotel room somewhere, just because I was
Yeah.
just like, "It's gonna happen. We should just leave." But then
I
it
think
did, and
you
it
and
was.
Pat were both on that kind of like fuck this thing, and it was. I mean,
Mhm.
that's what I'm talking about. That level of touring. I think it'd be someone should make a documentary about that kind of stuff, like the kind of level of touring where like you literally don't even know if the show is happening when you arrive. You know, like you arrive somewhere and
Yeah.
you're like, do they even know that we're like playing and that the show's is this even the right place? You know, like
Yeah. It felt very uncertain that night, and that would have been a good episode. I remember we got pizza before too, and I was like, man, that is the worst fucking pizza I've ever had in my life. I don't know how pizza can be bad, but it was bad.
that's interesting. Well, I, that is interesting because that was Pittsburgh, and I do remember that show being kind of pretty shit. But I do remember that city being like so beautiful to me. Like driving, I didn't know what to expect when we were driving through Pennsylvania, which is very pretty, and then like you drive through all these mountains, these tunnels in the mountains, and then you come on the other side, and like finally drove through this long tunnel, and then come on the other side of the mountain. It's just like drops down,
Man.
and you're on this like bridge, and the whole city is there. It's
Hmm.
so beautiful, and like going down like the motorway, like the exit into like these little kind of like really like kind of blue collar, hilly industrial neighborhoods.
Hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. I remember we ate something. I don't remember being bad, but I just remember just standing there in the street eating some like something from some like grill or whatever, and just being like, "Fuck, this place is beautiful. This place is awesome."
Yeah.
And then yeah, the show was weird, but
Yeah. That thinking about that tour a little bit more is, man, that tour was really important in a lot of ways. I think for me personally, like that, I remember at the Chicago show, that was the first time I had met Joe Lombardo, and I had written with him a little bit before that. That was the first
right.
time I had met him in person. So that was really cool, and that was also when we played in Columbus. Now that I think about it, that was the first time I had met Brad Griggs too. Um,
Wow, really?
and yeah, so that we've are great friends now and have been for years, and obviously bandmates together in Heat Signature. So that tour had more impact than I thought it did after thinking about it.
For sure. I mean, I think stuff like that always has huge impact and huge positive. I mean, even if there are negative consequences, negative effects at the time, or things feel shit at the time, and the whole thing's a failure, there's still so many positive things that come from it,
Hmm. Yeah, that was
like
great.
life changing things, like that you don't really realize till later.
Hmm. Um, what was the fest that they were doing in New York? Oh, 10 years ago or so, or it was like Maps, I guess is what I'm thinking of. But I remember one time I played that fest, and immediately going to Texas like the next day to do like a little mini tour with Kieran Aurora and Sis Sisters and Wrong Hole. Yeah, we did like a little. I think no wait,
Yeah,
no wait, is Niall on that tour? No, damn. I think it was that one was just me and Kieran Aurora and Patrick that does Sis Sisters. But
yeah.
anyway, that was a real like whirlwind thing where I like played the show at Maps and then got into a taxi and went to the airport and felt like a rock star, you know, like it was just like an intense night of not very much sleep and traveling a lot. And,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, touring's the best. It's like that's really important, you know, important
yeah,
experience
for
for people to
sure.
have.
I mean, it is true. I mean, I do get what you're saying about like the being older and like you can't really accept some of those conditions anymore. And I mean, I gotta respect Pat for coming along with that first one with us because he was a bit older and
Old man with like a nice home and a nice life, and yeah, and then he got thrown back into
yeah,
that ugly mix of
yeah.
of
But it was cool
just
because he
squalor.
rented his own. He rented his own car. We like all shared a car, and he was like, "I gotta rent my own." He rented his own like SUV or something like that.
Yeah, hmm, yeah,
We were all like kids with no money, and he had some. He's a career man who had the budget for something like that.
hmm,
But yeah, I totally get that now. It's like, well, you got that at the time too, but like you can't, you don't want to fuck with that kind of shit at some point anymore.
yeah. Guess I don't mind doing it every once in a while. I like going into a situation knowing that there's going to be a certain level of um, good thing, good positive attributes about the whole deal. You know, whether like in the
Yeah.
venue, like knowing that the show is going to be good, there's going to be a good lineup, there's going to be a good sound system.
Yeah.
The place we're going to stay at is like decently livable. You know, like
Right.
having just some sort of
Yeah.
standard is good and healthy. I think. You know.
Well, I hope that you have good experience in Europe. I think I've talked about this on the podcast a couple times, but I get the sense that it's here. There's just generally more of a kind of a culture of like taking care of some basic things when you book someone. Like maybe
Mm-hmm.
not money, but like something to eat at least, and
Mm-hmm.
some beers or whatever, or and a place to stay. I know sometimes playing in the U.S., there's none of that. Like
Yeah.
you arrive somewhere, it's not like someone's like, "Hey, welcome guys, we got you." Like, let's order some pizzas. Like, what do you guys want, or like whatever. It's like you show up and you totally fend for yourself. And I do feel like here there's more just basic consideration of kind of basic things, and I hope you experience that when you come with your
Yeah.
furniture.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so too. I think it'll be. So far, it seems like it's very promising how it's going to turn out, and I mean, at the very least, we'll just enjoy it as sort of a hectic vacation,
Yeah,
noise vacation, I guess.
yeah,
Be a little intense traveling around and all the logistics of all that stuff, and I'm a little nervous about that because we're covering a lot of ground in a pretty short amount of time, but um, I'm sure it'll work out just fine, though.
yeah. You've been um you've been overseas a couple times. You've been to Europe too, and you've played in Japan, right?
Yeah, I went to Europe and played a couple shows there, like in 2012, and I was with Mikkel Rorbo,
Yeah.
who was doing Ali Pisser, I think, on that tour. Yeah, he was. He wasn't doing his like other newer project, but yeah. So we just played Copenhagen and Gothenburg. We just played two shows, and then I kind of went off on my own, and then met up with my wife Kathleen, who came like a week or so after I got to Europe.
Cool.
So yeah, I played in Europe a couple times before, and then went to Japan and played there a couple times too.
What's Japan like?
It's great. It's I really love it as a visitor and a tourist. I love it. Yeah, I just want to keep going back there and not really go other places. Even though I do like to travel a lot and check out other places, but I love Japan. It's just I don't know the everything about it. The noise aspect is awesome because yeah, it's not really that much different as far as the amount of people involved, compared to other scenes around the world. I think, but people that do it there are very serious about it and make sure that they do really good, and that there's just a high level of quality with everything in Japan. Generally speaking, people
Mhm,
just
mhm.
there's everything is just sort of better in a lot of ways. Just I mean, like the artists, they make more of an effort to perform really good sets, and because there's a lot of competition there, a lot of the people performing, it's just a high standard set, and
Yeah.
so and like a lot of time, not always, but most of the time, the venues, like the sound system's incredible, just because that's the level of standard there.
You mentioned your brother, Nate, and orgasmic response unit. He also does diaphragmatic, his
Hmm.
solo project. What's he up to these days, and how's he doing?
He's doing well. He lives in Vietnam now. Uh, what, why can't I think of the town he lives in? Um, he did live in Hanoi, but I can't remember the place he lives in now with his wife. But he has a
Mhm.
baby and is just working there now. They're working on immigrating back to the U.S. They're in the process of that, which is so that's their ultimate plan is to move back to the U.S.
Cool.
But he's busy there with. He still does noise. He doesn't really put out releases that much, but he plays live pretty regularly.
Really?
Yeah, and there's like a bit of a scene there, and
Cool.
um, yeah, it sounds like it's pretty good. Like it's active enough where I see him playing shows and he's enjoying it and networking with other people there. He said the last show he played, they had a Function One sound system, which I don't know if you know anything about Function One
No.
PAs, but they're like these really, really high end like club PAs that you like see in like big dance clubs in Berlin and Tokyo and
Nice.
stuff like that. But so I was like envious that he got to play through a Function One sound system.
Sick.
Yeah.
Any ideas or plans to do orgasmic response unit again?
Yeah, definitely want to continue that. We've talked about it. But really, I think we both want it to be like an in-person thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it is us playing together in person. I'm not a fan of mail order or not mail order, but mail collabs. This doesn't really work for me that well. So I like playing in person with people and really only want to do it that way.
Mhm.
So yeah, whenever he comes back, I would love to resume it. We just haven't had really many opportunities at all to play together in like the last several years, just because of him being
Sure.
overseas and whenever he's home, it's like
Yeah.
he can't bring his equipment here and so on. But yeah, we've done it a little bit here and there.
When we did the last interview, I asked you your top 5 noise releases of all time, right? I did.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not gonna ask you that again, but since you work in a record store, that's a general, okay, I'm gonna ask you a different question. I'm gonna ask you
Hmm.
your top 5 records of all time.
Ooh, that's tough. That's like harder than the noise question. Um, hmm. Damn. Uh, okay, let me think about it for just a second. Top five
Yeah.
records of all time.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then just for
Uh,
you, okay, go ahead. Yeah, you go ahead.
I was gonna say Velvet Underground and Nico. I think I can put that as my number one.
Mhm.
That's what kind of been my number one for a long time. Um, hmm. uh, Probably a Sonic Youth record. Uh, Damn, I don't know which one though. That's tough to ask. Okay. Slayer, Show No Mercy. That would be
Mhm.
in my top five too. I've listened to that like as many times as Velvet Underground and Nico. Probably right now, I'd say another one would be Soft Cell, Nonstop Erotic Cabaret, being in the top five too. DJ Shadow Introducing. That would be a fifth one that I would toss in there.
Okay, cool.
And that would change a lot. That list would change over and over again, but this is stuff I
Yeah,
can.
yeah, I'm sure. Then the next thing I want to ask you, which I think would maybe even be more interesting, is what are your top 5 like records that have come out in the past year, non-noise? Because I'm really, really interested and I have zero real idea of what's going on in the like general music world in
Yeah.
terms of new music right
Uh,
now. Besides a few genres and stuff like that, what are 5 records that came past year maybe across some genres that you really that are important to know about that are your favorite?
I don't think I can answer that question either. I don't really like new music that much.
Okay, so you're not really like into and up on like the new stuff that's coming out.
No, I'm not. I don't. Yeah, I can't honestly can't think of even one thing. I don't think that I can't even think of one thing. I don't know. I don't really pay attention to new releases. Sometimes I hear stuff and it sounds pretty cool, but I just don't care about it. I don't know why. Nothing really excites
Okay.
me with.
I just kind of figured as a record store owner that you'd be forced to just kind of like be up on that, even if you weren't interested. I know that
Yeah,
new vinyl is kind of a thing, probably, and I don't know. I don't know how much of that you get. Probably not that much, but it's like I know that's a thing. Oh,
yeah,
Beyonce record on vinyl and all that stuff. I mean, I'd imagine you
yeah,
stock some of that as a just a because people want to buy it. But I mean,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I picked up on what's popular with people for sure. Like current music was popular, but I don't really know much of anything about it. I don't really listen to like new pop music, but I carry Billie Eilish and Taylor Swift and all the other people. I don't think I've ever listened to any of their music ever though, but I know people like to buy it. So um, yeah, I don't like the way new music sounds really.
yeah,
This is like the production thing. I like the sound of older music.
yeah,
Uh, Music from the 70s and 80s particularly. I like the production value of it, and so I just think a lot of new stuff sounds like shit, basically. It just sounds, I don't know, it doesn't
yeah,
appeal to my ears for some reason. Um,
yeah.
so,
How much of music that people buy in your store are you like, oh, that's you got good taste, that's cool, and how much are you like, oh, that's so stupid? I like ratio wise, roughly, like
uh, it's probably maybe like 25% of the time I think that people are buying cool stuff. I mean, it just depends on the customer, you know. I'm pretty I'm really open-minded about what people enjoy, and I just think people should enjoy whatever they want to, I guess, even if I don't like it.
yeah,
But certainly, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that people buy, and I'm like, great, thank you, that pays the bills, like
yeah,
whatever they're buying, even if I don't like it or whatever. I used to be like really picky about the types of records that I would have in the store, and now we're just kind of like loosening things up a little bit and pricing stuff that I wouldn't have priced before, but people want. So yeah, um, yeah, it just depends on the
do you
customer,
think
you know.
you mentioned in the beginning like kind of the do, dealing with noise as a business commodity kind of has killed or like killed a bit of the magic for you? Is that you also mentioned though that working at a record store has opened your mind to a lot of music and expanded
Hmm.
your horizons, but has it also kind of like done the same thing in a way to music in terms of making it a commodity that you're less excited about it?
Yeah, I feel like a certain detachment from the greater world of records in a way than I do noise because I feel like it's more of a personal connection I have with it than other stuff. Um, so I think it's maybe easy to separate myself from that. There's a lot of stuff about the you know market of records that really bothers me a lot. Like I think everything is like getting way too expensive and unaffordable and inaccessible to people, and you have these people like telling you, oh, you need to like um buy physical music and get off of streaming because the artists don't get paid well enough from royalties. But it's like that's not practical for most people. What's practical is paying
Yeah,
$10 a month for a streaming subscription so they can just fucking listen to this music and not have to pay
yeah,
$35 for one album on vinyl.
right.
Um, so
Not to mention the secondhand industry, they don't see anything,
right, yeah.
right?
However, I think that does a job in perpetuating general fandom with bands, and
Sure, 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 sure.
if somebody's gonna, the artist doesn't get royalties checks from secondhand sales, but at least it'll generate interest in their
Oh, of
band or
course, of
whatever.
course, of course, of course.
But
Yeah, I was talking to a guy who orders a ton for my distro, and I think he runs or owns a record store in Portugal, and I don't know, I was chatting with him at one point, and just like, when I do these distro updates, sometimes I can be like, it is like overwhelming, or it's like I'm like sitting here like for a day, like with a stack of shit I need to add in, and just like typing it in, finding the picture online, like it's like data entry, and I'm just like, fuck. And I was kind of like bitching about it to him a little bit, and he was like, but I was like, it's still cool because it's still like the stuff I love, but sometimes it's so tedious
mhm,
to sell all this stuff. And he's like, dude, imagine doing it with like indie rock records, like he does. Like he does the same thing all day at his record
yeah,
store with genres of music he doesn't like at all,
mm,
or and,
yeah,
and shipping them and all that. I mean, I think I imagine that can also. I mean, at least when I get frustrated with dealing with noise, it's still noise that I'm like
yeah,
excited about, but I think it could probably be very frustrating to have to be handling so much stuff that it's like, fuck, I hate this shit. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I don't know, it's just like the way the job goes. I mean, I love having a store, it's amazing, it's like I said, I absolutely love it, but, yeah, there's certain parts I don't like about it or, like, selling music that I don't care about, but I'm able to separate that from the stuff that I really do care about and
Yeah,
support, push on people too, like,
that's cool.
yeah, I'll carry whatever records I don't care about that other people wanna buy, and I'm happy to provide that for them, but, like, it's cool having things that you actually do, like, genuinely support, and you can talk about it with authenticity, and share that with
Yeah,
other people. That's great.
that's very cool. That is a dream job. I mean, that is what people dream about, and of course, everything is going to have annoying side effects, but that's really really cool. What do you what do you think is the long term, maybe not long term, and the short long term future of physical media, record stores, streaming, all that kind of stuff? As kind of an insider, where do you see that all going currently?
Um, I think it's not gonna go anywhere, for sure. It's not gonna be totally phased out, because there's, more now than ever, it's obvious that there's a contingent of people that really having something to hold in their hands is very important.
Hmm.
So I think it's going well, despite just the stuff with like new vinyl that's frustrating the high cost, but we're kind of experiencing that with all the different aspects of our lives, with inflation and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to hold out. I think there's going to be a resurgence in CDs for sure, like a larger resurgence beyond just noise. And I feel like a noise right now. I feel like the CD is at the top of the game in a lot of ways. It's like,
I do too. I'm convinced I love it. I think it's the best format, and I think it should return also as a main music format.
mhm.
Really.
One thing I noticed is a lot of younger people coming in the store and buying CDs, and which is probably a multifaceted thing. I think it's because they have cars that still have CD players because there are these younger kids that are getting hand-me-down cars or cheaper cars that have
Yep.
CD players.
Yep.
That they can't afford vinyl because they don't have enough money to buy records. And then also, I think it's becoming a nostalgia thing for people too,
Yeah.
especially like young people. Maybe not necessarily nostalgia because it's like nostalgia for something that they never experienced before. Because if they're young enough and they're buying CDs, it's very likely that they grew up completely off of streaming.
Yeah.
So now they're getting into something kind of a novelty like a CD.
Exactly, and that's something I've been kind of oblivious to, but noticing more consciously recently. And I talked about this with Kenny on the interview with Kenneth Facial Mess that'll come out very soon too. Is like this style. I don't know, like I guess the Gen Z like fashion style, everything that's cool like right now is like seems to be like the kind of stuff that was cool when I was in high school
Yeah.
or younger. You know, like the hairstyles, it's like the early 2000s shit. You know, kind of like nostalgia, and that's again now for kids that never experienced it. You know, tribal tattoos. I even seen like kind of hipster, modern like art hipster kind of design, like this kind of tribal, like neo tribal kind of patterns start coming
Yeah.
back in a lot of stuff. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it, but it's definitely there. I mean, it's definitely a huge thing. I think CDs are a big part of that.
Yeah. 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 It's certainly part of that. Yeah. 90s like culture sort of fetishism, early
Yeah,
2000s. Um, but yeah, everything's cyclical. So of course it was
yeah,
going to come back around, you know. And it's a lot as CDs specifically are like records are a lasting format because they've been around since like the early 80s, I think. I feel like 82 or something maybe was a year that CDs first came out. So they've been around for 50 years. Or no, not 50 years. 40 years, you know.
45.
So it's not going anywhere. I don't think it's going to
Yeah,
die out or anything like that.
I think that's great. I think people. I mean, I like records, but I think ultimately with all the new vinyl, people are gonna hopefully eventually learn to cut the bullshit that new vinyl is pretty much pointless in terms of when you have a album of new music that was produced, you know, totally digitally and all, you know, everything like that to press it on like some kind of substandard quality vinyl for
Yeah.
an exorbitant amount of money that doesn't do the material justice. I think
Hmm.
CDs are the perfect like gate or the perfect missing link between the the fidelity of, you know, the original recording, which, you
Hmm.
know, it can be a nice warm recording, whatever, do what you want to do in the studio, but the I don't see a need to add like a layer of color to that recording in many cases. I mean, the old records, yes, of course. I mean, that has a really nice effect, but that blend, but then you still have a physical object that can be really special and nice and it can have all the same charm as an LP, I think. I mean, it's okay, it's smaller and, you know, whatever, but it can still have just that same, for me it has that same nostalgia because I mean, I grew up getting CDs as a kid and I still love opening the booklet of a CD, having CDs to
Hmm.
throw on. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think they're really the best format. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because, you know, from an economic standpoint, it's totally nonsensical. Like new records. Because yeah, you can buy the CD counterpart for a fraction of the price, literally a fraction of the price of the vinyl counterpart. And yeah, it's weird how there's a culture
Well, it's like
of
especially if you're gonna cut like an album in half, like the CD format. I love it. Like you can at least design your album how you want to make it. You can have it be one long track. You can have it be, you know, three 20-minute tracks. As soon as you say, "Hey, let's put this on vinyl," it's like, okay, what do we want to? What can we chop off or truncate
yeah,
or how do we place it so it fits on vinyl? I mean, when albums were written for vinyl back then, that's one thing because they were like, okay, we have to write this album to be able to fit on this, but now you
yeah,
don't have to, and so I think forcing something onto vinyl that wasn't made for vinyl is like, I don't know.
yeah. No, that's like yeah, frustrating, and it doesn't make any sense really. Like, and you see like these like reissues of stuff. Like, no offense to Hiroshima or Hiroshima, however you say it, but I love that label. he does really, really important work with like reissuing stuff, but sometimes it's just like it doesn't make any sense. Why would a
Yeah.
Masana reissue that was a CD come out as an LP? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It belongs
Right.
as a CD the way it was supposed to
Yeah.
be, that came out originally.
Yeah.
And there's no
Yeah.
way that something like Masana is going to sound better on a record than it does on a CD because it absolutely just like
Yeah.
destroys on a CD, and that can't match
Yeah.
what a record can do. So there's like stuff like that where I'm just kind of like, just doesn't make any sense, and it's purely a vinyl fetishism thing that's just kind of annoying. Like,
For sure.
yeah, I kind of think of records in a little bit more of a practical sense. I mean, I certainly like collecting them a lot. I love collecting stuff, but like
Yeah.
now more than ever, I see records as tools because I'm just, doing a lot of DJing recently. And so
Oh, cool.
the way that I look at records is like to be used, and as like,
Cool.
tools basically for
Yeah.
at least DJing anyway. And so,
What about the current mainstream situation with cassettes? Because I've sort of heard that cassettes are also trying to be kind of brought back in a novelty way by major labels and major artists. Is that something you're seeing? I've never really seen it. I don't really go to record stores around here,
um,
but
yeah, it seems like that is kind of happening. I don't really buy any of that stuff because the wholesale costs are like ridiculous. You know, when you're like,
I
I've
heard someone
been,
saw a Britney Spears tape at a Urban Outfitters for like $18.
yeah, that's like a regular retail price with a new tape. So when you've been steeped in cassette culture with noise for many many years, and then you see like a distributor send out a solicitation for like a tape version of something, and then the wholesale's $12, and it's like fuck off. That's I know how much it costs to okay, and I know what tapes sound like too, and
Yeah.
that's certainly not worth it. Like that's yeah. So I don't really care. I don't carry any of that stuff, but
Okay. That's
yeah.
just something I've been interested in, and I also kind of tied into like the issues I've been having with the quality of blank tapes and things like that. And I'm wondering, are they shutting down production? Are they just skimping on production? Are they making them differently? And I'm just curious if maybe that resurgence of kind of like popularity or kind of novelty of tapes could somehow also help the market for cassette decks and blank materials and just like the raw materials, if they would maybe invest more money into kind of maintaining that format and keeping it alive. But I don't know if that's really true. I mean, I bet they're not really trying to make those things sound good. They're just kind of make them sound
Yeah.
like an
Yeah. I
object.
kind of doubt it. Yeah. It seems like it's a strange time because it is like, we're out of like the period where cassettes were prominent and a lot of them were being made, and probably more attention and focus was put into the production, and so there was higher quality products, and then like it basically went away after a while, and then there's places like duplication.ca which seem to be making like a big effort to like improve the quality of all that stuff of like duplication and the actual media itself, and
Mhm.
so it does seem like there's a little bit more of an effort to
Yeah,
improve things in general. But
yeah,
just one thought I just want to throw out there too. It's interesting to think about like physical media now, because now we're completely out of an age of it existing out of necessity, So that's totally gone now, and that was
yeah,
a huge part of like why people had all that stuff,
yeah,
because you had to. It was the only
yeah,
way you could listen to it outside of listening to music on the radio. And now it's purely, um, I don't know, it's like a preferential thing, or it's nostalgia and fetishism. I don't know. It's strange. Yeah. Because it's not necessary at all anymore.
yeah. It's it. I mean, no, it's not. But I mean, for certain genres of music, I mean, personally, it's mainly tied to budget, my money. If I had a lot of money, I would probably. and in space, and knew, okay, I'm gonna be here for a long time, and blah blah blah, and I have a house. I would probably collect much more music on physical media,
Hmm.
but since I don't, um, it's always kind of been like, to me, noise is like the format I need to have on physical media.
Yeah.
I've gotten sometimes in the habit of listening to stuff online, or kind of to sample it, and the practicality can come in handy sometimes, but it's still not. It's still, noise has to be physical format for me. But
Yeah.
I really am totally used to pretty much every other type of music, because I don't really care about most other types of music as much as noise. They're more kind of like entertainment, I guess, for me, or just something. So I'm much more interested, like happy now to like just listen to whatever I feel like listening to otherwise on a streaming platform. Like that doesn't
Hmm.
that doesn't bother me. But
Yeah.
noise has got to be physical format for me for sure.
Yeah. I guess as things have gotten more complicated over time, how do we, now that we're in this new age where, yeah, just physical media exists for different reasons than it used to. Um, yeah, and people like will listen to certain types of music on a certain format. You see that too, or like,
Yeah.
which is really fascinating. That because I'm like you, I don't stream noise at all. I've never done the Bandcamp thing. I've never like I just don't have a situation where I'm digitally listening to music or like streaming, I guess. Like at work I'm listening to records all day. We don't stream music or anything. And I know that's how a lot of people listen to their music is when they're working, they're streaming it, but
Yeah.
we just play records. So that's just the way it is. I listen to CDs in my car. Um yeah. Yeah, I don't absorb noise that way either. I'm never sitting down at my computer to listen to music ever. That's not a part of my listening routine.
Yeah. I do kind of think sometimes about the economic factor of it, though. I mean, I do feel like it is. I mean, I think some sort of gatekeeping in in noise is important, but not based on people having money or not. And
Mhm.
I think like to focus on also like, oh, it's not the real thing unless you buy the tape or you have the tape or the CD.
Mhm.
Um, I don't like that idea. I do feel that connection to the media, but I don't like the idea. Like I do like the idea of people being able to engage in noise without having like tons of money to spend on collecting the objects.
Mhm.
I do though how I do however like realize that, okay, we're not really mostly talking about like really poor people, and usually you can prioritize your budget, and if noise is something you love that much, even if you're barely getting by, you might spend your extra little scratch on some noise tapes, and those are going to be like super important for you, and you don't necessarily need to have a completist collection of everything, but that is I do think that financial element of commitment to something brings a certain amount of seriousness to it.
Yeah. Mhm.
Like
Yeah, I mean,
the thing that Dillaway said, which was quite interesting, that I didn't never thought of, but I asked him, why do you think there was that kind of lull in noise activities after the mid 2000s, no fun kind of boom. And his first answer was like it was connected with the markets crashes of those times, and that it just hit the noise scene a few years later, because noise people were pretty resilient. They would have money for you know beer, weed, and noise tapes and nothing else,
mhm.
after they pay their rent. and then eventually
Yeah.
the economics caught up to them, and they only had money for beer and weed,
Hmm.
and that was like the
Yeah.
main reason for the slump in in the scene and activity, which I don't know if I really can. I doubt it's really that material, but
I don't know. Maybe
could
that's
be
a lot more
possible.
connected than we think. The global, what's going on globally is maybe affecting things a lot more than we think. I mean, certainly with a pandemic, like that was a global thing that was heavily affecting what was going on in the noise scene in many different ways,
Yeah.
like financially and creatively. Creatively speaking, people having more time, and so yeah, maybe larger world events affect affect things like noise than more than we think they do. You know.
They probably, yeah, they really probably do. I mean, I do. That's what I think about a lot, is just that where are we headed with, physical formats in the next few years within noise, at least, because like things are just getting, like, tapes are getting so expensive to make, they're
Hmm.
getting more expensive to buy, um, and it was always kind of like, it cost some money, but it was like a pretty easy early, like, easy entry ticket. Like, when discovered noise, I discovered Tronics right away and was able to get so many killer CDs for so cheap.
Hmm.
And he had them for $5 a piece, I think, like, postpaid,
Yeah.
and that's basically unheard of now. And then tapes were like six. So, I mean, even if you didn't have much money, you could still find a bit of money to get some noise tapes each month. But when they're
Yeah.
heading into, you know 10, it's like, I think noise. I think in terms of the cost, I think $10 is a pretty reasonable price to sell a tape for these days. Like, I used to think that
Yeah.
was absurd when people would sell tapes for $10, but now it's
Yeah.
like, when you know what it costs now, it's like, yeah, $10 is kind of like what it should cost, or
Yeah.
somewhere around there.
Hmm.
But at some point, we can't. Not everyone's gonna be able to afford all the at least the amount of noise that likes to get that likes to get released. If things
Right.
creep into those prices, I mean, you can rationalize paying $12 on a certain special noise tape from a certain special label or artist or whatever. Hospital is one of those labels that they can price them pretty much whatever and they'll sell. I mean, there's other artists that can do that, but not everyone can do that. Not everyone should. If everyone starts to try to do that, we're going to be in trouble, or at least it'll
Yeah.
change things in a big way.
Hmm. Yeah. I think it's definitely like affected my sales with noise stuff. I'm sure you've seen that too. Just like the high price on things now. Things don't sell as quickly as they used to.
Mhm.
At least far as like cassettes are concerned. It's definitely way harder to sell a tape that costs $12 versus even $10 or $8.
Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully, CD production remains inexpensive and people just use that, and because I think it's like the easier, at least for me, I guess, to be willing to spend $10 or $10 on a CD versus $10 on a tape. Absolutely.
What else you got coming up in the pipeline, if anything? Like, Skeleton Dust? I mean, Skeleton Dust has been pretty slow lately, but you've been putting out stuff here and there. It's been pretty cool. You got
Thanks.
anything
Yeah.
in the pipeline for Skeleton Dust right now?
Yeah, there's a few things I'll mention. I think they're going to come out uh, within the next like few months, ideally. But CD releases, of course. Um, so there's going to be a new album for Fail Association. It's going to be a CD on Skeleton Dust. I'm going to do a reissue of the Heat Signature and Glass Half Dark Relief tour tape that
Nice.
we put out, CD. And then I'm doing two. Just pinned this down recently, but two reissues for Kazumoto Endo, While You Were Out and Brick and Mortar. Those are going to be reissued. So
Whoa,
yeah,
that's huge.
Yeah. And it was kind of like a thing like, why hasn't this happened already? I can't believe I'm the first person that's ever asked him to reissue this stuff. Because those things have been tough to get for
huge.
a while, and they're absolutely essential albums, in my opinion.
I honestly don't think I've ever heard Brick and Mortar.
It's incredible. As good, if not better, than While You Were Out.
I'm stoked.
And
That's great.
yeah. So those are in the works now, and While You Were Out is going to be. I basically want it to be like a copy of the original, just because I think the visual design of the original release, it can't get any better than what it is. It's like iconic. I don't want to change anything about it, but there's going to be some like additional like bonus like photos that are going to be included that didn't make it on the original release. So, and I'm still working out like how the brick and mortar is going to be, because I don't have access, and neither does Endo, to like the art files. So I'm trying to track down the guy that originally released that, and hopefully get the art files from that. But it's more or less going to be the same. I don't want to change the artwork or anything.
Cool. Great.
Yeah. And then we have the Heat Signature European tour that's coming up in late April.
Yeah, where are you playing?
So we're playing the Crude Transmissions Festival, and that's kind of the impetus for the trip.
Yes.
And then we're also playing in Kortrijk, Belgium, the day after.
Cool.
And then there's a show in Cologne that's happening the day after that. And then playing Ostrava in Czechia, which is, I don't know, I was recommended that over Prague for some reason.
Okay. Cool.
So we're playing there, and playing Warsaw, and then Berlin, and then Malmo, Stockholm, and Gothenburg. I'm not sure if that's the correct order, but we're playing those towns. Okay. So, and a couple of those bills are going to be shared with, Pain Appendix and Worth, because they're going to be there at the same time as us. So
yes,
they're playing the fest, and I think show or two afterwards. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that's great news. I appreciate you talking with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. I appreciate it. And you're doing God's work with the podcast, Oscar, for sure. It's like a super important thing, and hope you know that people really appreciate it a lot, what you do.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Cool. Well, then take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks.
Bye. In the extended segments of this interview that you can find on Patreon, Luke talks about his approach to stocking controversial material at the store, as well as a bit on the current East Palestine, Ohio train disaster. Go to patreon.com/whitecenipedenoise to see that extended segment, as well as lots of other exclusive content. Thank you to all who support. Big shout out to the Maniac Circle, and an extra special thank you to the heavy sponsors of this podcast. Really appreciate all of you.